Thank you,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Kaufman. Very exciting.
I'll be there.
I'd hope so.
Ms. Goins, welcome.
Thank you. I'm Catherine Goins, and I'm here to talk about child poverty in Placer County. When I said that to my counterparts, they said, really? Aren't you guys like Granite Bay and golf courses? And it really is a tale of two Placers, because the Placer County that I've been at for 11 years is 1,400 square miles with poor, largely Latino children spread all throughout the county. Our poverty level, while still low compared to some of my urban counterparts, has doubled in recent years. And so we're finding that what is unique about our approach, we believe, is that it's a truly collaborative approach. And one of the things about, Dr. Kaufman recently mentioned braiding. Well, in Placer County, our agency braids 24 different funding sources in order to serve the early education population. That's the good news. The bad news is we have 24 different funding sources, often competing. It works in that we're able to leverage state, federal, and local funding sources to provide a variety of programs for low-income families. We operate both the alternative payment, AP, stage 1, 2, 3, and we also operate direct services programs. One of our more innovative programs is our Family Child Care Home Education Network program, and that is a public-private partnership. We have private businesses, often husband and wife teams, who operate a small family child care in their home. It takes several family sources together, Head Start, for example, and Early Head Start, and their voucher, and they combine them all to have the high quality of a Title V program, but also the flexibility and parent choice, as well as some of the night and weekend care that some of our parents so desperately need. One challenge that we're facing right now is that not all of these funding sources are sustainable. Some of them are one-time. Some of them are County Office of Education funding sources that are declining because of healthcare increases and the PERS and STIRS. And so we have an excellent program. We are not sure that we will be able to sustain it for the long term. The other thing that Placer County does is we look at our early education system as part of a family support system, because we do not separate out these young children from their families. And it's very important that the families are connected to CalFresh, to social services, health, nutrition, mental health. This is all part of what has to happen for the families to get out of poverty. And so part of what we do is connect them to those resources. The other thing that we think is very important is that we've been operating our programs for more than 20 years. And we are able to operate the AP program. It's one of our successful programs. It's called the Golden Ticket. You get that, and then you can choose your provider. Although we're finding some of our families don't have the choice that we would hope that they would have. The previous parent was very eloquent talking about all the paperwork that is involved. And what she was alluding to is you have access if the provider takes your voucher. But the provider will not take your voucher if you don't have consistent care, because you're only paid if you actually have care on that day. So someone who's on call, which is very often the case for our working parents, may not get called in on Thursday. Well, that provider's not going to get paid, but yet they still have to have staff on that day. So this is just one of the regulations that we're finding is a barrier to helping people access that quality child care. Our market rates are low, so not everyone will take the voucher. When it works very well. And we have providers who are committed to high quality. They participate in our QRIS program. And so I think most of our parents, surprisingly, are two-parent programs, two parents, both working, and usually going to school at the same time, taking advantage of the programs. So this countywide approach, combining First 5 Placer and state funding and Head Start, works together for our families. I want to end with a quick story. I was in CVS Pharmacy the other day, and I ran into a man who I first helped in 1992. It's been 23 years, and he said, Miss Catherine, because once you're in preschool, you are Miss whatever for the rest of your life. It's me. And this was a man who came to us. He had 4 children. His wife had just left him with 4 young children, all age eligible. All he needed was childcare so that he could go to his 2 jobs. And when he told me the story of how much it meant to him and how he was able to keep his jobs and all his children are grown and thriving and no one is on public assistance anymore, and all he needed was that little hand out, hand up, and it was wonderful. And so I know that it works. I'm not a researcher. I don't have PhDs and a lot of fancy titles, but I've been doing it for 23 years, and I do see that the system works. And we just want to thank you for this opportunity to share our work in Placer County.
Wow, very good. Thank you, Ms. Goins. Yes, of course, go right ahead. Senator Mitchell. Yes.
Please forgive me. I told you about offsite, and Dr. Olnick and I are old friends and colleagues, so he won't mind that I ask a question of him before I leave. Will you, Dr. Olnick? Thank you.
See if I can answer it.
Well, first of all, I wanted to make sure that the audience and my colleagues know that today the California Legislative Women's Caucus issued our letter that states leadership of the Legislative Women's Caucus has requested an investment of no less than $600 million be dedicated to the child care system. This investment should be evenly distributed between modernizing rates and increasing slots. And my quick question, I hope Dr. Olnick will respond. Last year, in terms of rate increase, the RMR that the legislature passed was then taken by Department of Finance, and this deficit factor was magically infused in it. And so the question I really have is, based on your experience as the director of an AP in LA County, do you have a sense that your family daycare providers actually saw an increase as a result of the action taken by the legislature? And if you could give a sense of what the average increase in their reimbursement rate was. And if you don't have the data, you don't have to answer it now. Go ahead with your testimony, but just as long, I wanted to get that question out there, and so it's a part of kind of the record, and my colleagues and I know. I don't want to distract you from your regular testimony.
No, actually, it's on page 3.
Okay. Thank you, Senator. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator Mitchell. It's a great introduction, Dr.
It is
Olnick.
a great introduction, yeah.
You have credentials of Senator Mitchell.
Yeah, Senator Mitchell and I were part of the Child Care Alliance of LA for a number of years, and I've been the executive director, president and CEO of the Child Care Resource Center for the last 11 years. So we overlapped for a number of years there. So and it was quite a pleasure to be on the same organization with her.
I know the feeling.
And we used to go back and forth in terms of who had the largest agency. So now that she's leaving, we're the largest. Actually, we're a large child development agency. We provide resource and referral, subsidy, Head Start. We serve about 45,000 children and families in northern Los Angeles County and San Bernardino County. So we have a service area that runs from most of the southern part of the state. And our mission is to cultivate child, family, and community well-being. And as Catherine said, she manages, 28 funding streams. We're at about 37 funding streams right now, and some of them are really big and some of them are really small. We have 3 main customers: the parents that we work with, the children, and the child care providers. And we administer Stage 1 subsidy for LA County Department of Public Social Services. We administer Stage 2, 3 alternative payment. We have a family child care home education network, and those are contracts with the Department of Education. We're also a Head Start grantee for the San Fernando and Antelope Valleys in Los Angeles County, where we partner with the Palmdale School District. The R&R supports parents and providers. We provide referrals and encourage parents to choose quality settings. You heard about Valley Oaks. They're also a resource and referral. And we also educate providers on how to provide those quality settings. Our subsidy program serves 17,500 parents. 13,000 of those parents are employed, and 4,500 are in school or in training. We distribute just a little bit under $99 million in child care subsidy, and those parents earn $232 million. So I think that was a question from earlier this morning. That's a return of $2.35 for every dollar spent, and that's just on parents' earnings. That has nothing to do with the children's development over time and what they bring back. We find that as families progress from Stage 1 through Stage 3, their wages increase, their ability to work improves, and their choices move towards licensed child care and away from licensed exempt care. We've surveyed parents and found that those receiving subsidized child care are more likely to keep their job, move up in their job, and feel their children are more prepared for school than parents who are on our waiting list. 34% of our parents are employed in services and hospitality, 20% are in retail and grocery, 18% are in health, 11% are in government and nonprofits, 8% in education, 8% in hotel and restaurant, and 1% in manufacturing. That 34% services and hospitality, that's the front end people who are working at banks, places like that. So during the last 5 years during the recession, we saw a decrease in funding statewide, as you've heard over and over again. And our subsidy program experienced the greatest decrease. The state reduced eligibility so that fewer families were eligible. And the management fee for those programs is based on a percentage of the dollars that are distributed to pay for childcare. Our management fees for these programs were reduced when the rate was reduced by 12.5%. When you take 19% or 20% and reduce it to 17.5%, it comes out to being 12.5% decrease to us. In addition, the rate for license exempt providers was reduced from 90% to 60%. And since 60% of our providers are license exempt, we basically lost 33% of our funding and still had to manage the same number of cases, which meant that case managers increased their caseloads by 33%. And the question that the senator asked about the rates, they've not kept pace with the regional market, and even with the negative 10% factor of the 2009 survey, the overall effect that we're seeing is pretty minimal. In LA County, it looks like it's going to be about a 2% increase, and this is for rates that from 2005 till now have not gone up, and they're really very far behind. And in San Bernardino, there was really no increase in the rate at all. This has had an impact on our agency, where our turnover rate for staff has increased from 7% to 17%, because now there are other jobs out there that they can do where they don't have to work quite as hard, I think, as they do in the jobs that we've asked them to do. We're competing with the private sector and the public sector, and we're losing staff to both those places. We've been unable to provide services to children and families that we were able to provide before the recession. Back when the rates were higher, we were able to keep our case managers' cases lower, and we were able to screen our youngest children for developmental concerns. We've had to curtail that with the caseloads being what they are now. We were also able to visit providers, bringing them curriculum and advice while ensuring that they really existed and the children were really there. We've had to curtail that because of the rate decreases. Now, over the last 5 years, we've been able to mitigate some of these negative impacts by developing additional programs that support families and children. We operate as part of the Child Care Alliance, which is a consortium of 10 agencies, and we're funded by First 5 LA through the LA Universal Preschool for provider coaching and mentoring. We're also funded by First 5 LA through the Department of Public Health, through the Child Care Alliance for obesity prevention, and through UCLA to us for dental support. The Department of Public Health has contracted with us to recruit hard-to-reach populations for immunization, and we've been funded by First 5 to conduct a select home visitor program in LA County and 4 of their Best Start communities. First 5 San Bernardino has funded us to conduct a literacy program in homeless shelters. We recently received an early Head Start Child Care Partnership funding in Los Angeles County, and we're also partnering in San Bernardino County with the San Bernardino County Preschool Division and First 5 San Bernardino. Partnership, as you heard earlier, is federally funded and combines the child care subsidy program, provider coaching, and mentoring so that community child care providers can achieve Head Start educational standards. Subsidy parents and children also receive the comprehensive services that all Head Start and early Head Start children and parents receive. That includes mental health, physical health, dental, and parents receive counseling and case advocacy training. And 10% of these children enrolled also have special needs. In addition, we are actively involved in fundraising, volunteer management, and collecting in-kind donations that we distribute to children and families that we serve. For the last 5 years, we've collected and distributed 600,000 developmentally appropriate books to children who never owned their own book. We've also collected and distributed toys at the holidays, and we sponsor 3 community play days where 5,000 parents and children experience developmentally appropriate activities conducted by child care providers. We distribute fruits and vegetables at these events to promote healthy eating, and we've also created several fee-for-service endeavors. We provide research and evaluation for other community-based agencies. We conduct training in special topics that attract doctors, nurses, and social workers. We provide first aid and CPR training in Spanish, and we do printing for many of our partner agencies. These all generate funds that we use to support our current families and children. But As you heard, we foresee challenges. The first five are experiencing a downturn in their funding, and we're unsure whether contracts will continue beyond 2016. The recently reauthorized federal child care development block grant increased requirements on states to improve the quality of providers receiving child care development funds, which is the alternative payment program, but it doesn't add additional dollars to cover the repurposing of 5% for quality improvements. This will create a shortfall of about 4,000 spaces for the working poor in California, which means about roughly 400 spaces in our program, where we already have a waiting list of 26,850 children. Now, we serve about 10 to 11% of all the children in the state, so if you'd want, one of the questions you asked earlier was, how many children are there on that waiting list? Take my number, multiply it by 10. It gives you a little bit of a sense. It's not real accurate, but at least 270,000 children.
Over a $250,000.
Over $250,000. So my message to you is it's time for the state to restore funding to support families that use child care to escape poverty. It works. And it's also time for the state to examine ways that encourage child care providers to improve their craft to ensure children are ready for formal schooling.
Thank you, Dr. Olnick. And you opened my eyes to the extraordinarily wide variety of services that you provide.
You're welcome.
Dr. Kaufman, I had a couple questions about EduCare.
Sure.
What percentage, roughly, of your total funding is private?
So basically our breakdown, and this is just focusing on the classroom operations, our breakdown in the operational budget is 36% is federal, Head Start and Early Head Start, 20% is state preschool, and by the way, those are both operated by the County Office of Education, and then 19% is general fund from the Santa Clara County Office of Education that provided a contribution toward it, 7% is Eastside Union High School District and their general fund, and then 18% is from First Five. So in terms of the operational budget right now, it is being covered through the public dollars.
So what is the private contribution?
The private contribution, actually, in terms of a lot of the resources right now, has been for the capital campaign, for the facility itself, and the construction costs for that. Mm-hmm.
I would have been surprised if there were private dollars for operations. That's
Yeah.
not.
And if there's one thing I could add to your point, though, about operations, is there are some private funds. This is the classroom operational budget. We have received some funds from private resources to actually support things like professional development and things like that. And we would anticipate, as we continue to develop EduCare and the doors open, seeking more additional resources to really support the high intensive quality of the site.
Are funding sources fairly similar in the other states in which you operate?
I'm sorry?
Are the funding sources relatively similar in the other states in which you operate?
In terms of the education, in terms of the network, it is very much braided funding, usually between state and private, and then, I'm sorry, state and federal, and then private. What is interesting between California and many of the other EduCares is usually the base foundation of funding is usually Head Start, and then some state, and then private. Actually, in our role, it's usually the reverse. Actually, the state preschool funding is actually more of the funding stream, and not to say there isn't significant Head Start, but it's slightly flipped a little bit, where it's predominantly state and then some federal, and actually a lot of contributions from First Five as well as another public source that the other networks don't have.
You'd mentioned that you're open full day. What are those hours?
So right now, the plan, since we'll open in August, it's roughly 9.5 hours a day, 243 days a year, very much in line with the California State Preschool Program.
And who will qualify?
In terms of the braiding, what we're really, the assumption is that many of these families, the children that'll be enrolled will actually be eligible for both state preschool or general child care, but also early Head Start or Head Start. So we will anticipate that the children will be eligible for both systems.
Thank you. And Dr. Olnick?
Mm-hmm.
We had an exchange with the Department of Finance and asked what the vision was in restoring the near $1 billion that has been cut and the over 100,000 slots that have been lost. My first question, I'll have two for you. The first would be, if we have, and they would be limited, resources to begin to restore the cuts that we've made in recent years, where do you think would be the wisest investment? And then additionally, if we don't put together a vision as to how and when we're going to make an attempt to get back to where we were in 2007-8, if we were not to do that, what would be the future of your operations, and how do you think that would impact the rates and levels of poverty in California?
So my first answer is that I think we have to do something about the rates for child care providers. The difference between the regional market and what we're able to pay through the subsidy system has gotten to be so different that we're seeing fewer and fewer of our licensed providers wanting to take children. And as the economy heats up and there's more opportunity for them to provide care to parents who can pay the market rate, they're less likely to take the children that we're supporting, which means that those parents are then forced. Now, a lot of parents work odd hours and weekends, and so they use relatives and other family members, and there needs to be flexibility so that they can continue to do that. But for those families that wanted licensed care, they're really being priced out of the market if they're getting a subsidy. So to me, the number one issue is the rates. Number two, not too far behind that, is increasing the number of spaces that are available for low-income families. We've actually, we cut the eligibility rate down from, I think it was 75% to 70% of state median income. And we basically took a lot of people who were just being able to emerge from poverty and increased the difficulty that they had in finding care. The prognosis in terms of what happens if we don't build it back, if we stay where we are now, we will, agencies that are the size of mine will probably do okay, because we've got some economies of scale that when you move into the rural north and some of the other parts of the state, they're holding on by a thread as it is right now. And I think if there isn't some reinvestment, those agencies will probably be closing their doors, which means that the availability of care becomes that much harder for subsidized families to find.
And these would probably be in the most challenged parts of the state, which
Correct.
already have higher rates of unemployment
Correct.
than the state average.
Right. And we find in San Bernardino County that actually the people that are using our care are actually earning a little bit more than the parents in Los Angeles County, because the parents who are, you have to demonstrate that you have a need. You either have to be going to school or you have to be working, and there isn't the jobs out there in San Bernardino County in many of those rural areas. So there are no jobs. They don't qualify for the child care because they don't have the jobs. They're basically, they're stuck in welfare because there's no employment for them. We're talking, I think it's around a 20% unemployment rate in San Bernardino County, which is much higher than Los Angeles County. So concerned that we don't help people get off of welfare, and we increase the amount of poverty that's out there because they don't have the child care to be able to go to work, go to school. The other thing that we do is that we ask for parents to go to work, take any job, and really you need higher education in order to be able to succeed in this world anymore. And we have a number of parents who both go to school and work at the same time. And we need to make that a little bit easier for them so that they can get those, make it not just you have to get a job, any job, doesn't matter what it is, help them to be able to go to community college and get that AA degree so that they can move up in terms of their jobs. And what we've seen in the surveys that we've done is that those parents where we've provided those supports, those families move up. They're able to keep a job and they're able to move up in that job.
Thank you, Doctor. Questions from the committee? Senator Bell.
Well, I'm just really proud of our program that we're going to open in Santa Clara County. The Santee neighborhood is a very impoverished neighborhood that many years ago my mother taught in school there. So we have a little family history there. I want to ask you, the panelists, what is the impact of the state's decision to severely limit CalWORKs programs in terms of the 24-month limit and other restrictions? How has that affected the delivery of child care in California? Can you comment on the CalWORKs, over the last, say, 5 years when they started restricting CalWORKs? So right now, I think most poor people are not in CalWORKs anymore. It's becoming less of an impact on poverty. So what is your comments on that particular issue in terms of how it impacts child care programs?
I'm not sure I have a good answer for that one. We track how many we have, but we're not tracking what happens to those who've been time out.
It's like been cut billions of dollars.
It has.
I mean, yes, billions have been taken out of CalWORKs. We used to have the 60-day, 60-month. Now we went to 48. Now we're down to 24. So it's been just, wiped out. And it affects the stage 1, 2, and 3 system. Pushes everybody back into the 2 and the 3s because this CalWORKs is really a really short-term kind of system.
I would also say that it adds more pressure onto the AP system, the alternative payment that is separate from the stages, because when those families aren't eligible, they still need to be on the waiting list. They're still looking for work. They're still looking for employment. And so it just puts more pressure on the waiting lists.
Okay.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Allen.
Bigger question probably that we need to deal with today, but I think that's the kind of question I want to ask. I mean, we're sort of like focused on child care today, but then there's all these other systems that have been just, the legs have been cut out from under them. They don't really exist anymore in a reality sense. I mean, can't say we really have a CalWORKs program like we used to have 5 years ago. It's totally devastated. Now we don't have it anymore.
That's true. That's true. Well, I'm going to go from a macro to a very micro question, which is just for you, Dr. Kaufman. I don't, having served on a local board, I can't tell you how impressed I am by this building timeline, where your groundbreaking is literally a year before the opening of the actual building itself. What is the secret of your success and the rapidity of this getting online? I've served on a school board where we're so backlogged on bonds and construction that I'm just so impressed with this timeline. I'd love to hear whatever insights you have.
Well, my simplest answer is there's actually someone in the audience, and that is Matt Tinsley in the second row. He works on EduCare for us, and he has been working on this diligently full-time in just project management and keeping this on track. In terms of that, I think it goes back to the partnerships. And so very quickly speaking, I mean, through the partnerships with Franklin McKinley School District and Eastside, it's working on the existing partnerships they have, be it with construction companies, contractors, and so forth, in making this happen very, very quickly. And then also doing, and this is not something I'm as expert in, but doing things like a lease-back program in terms of the construction. So it's really, I think, been the good partnership not only with the district, but the district's partnerships with their construction partners in the district to make this work and be very, very quick and relatively quick.
Well, congratulations, and I'm really excited to see what you're able to do on that campus there. It's exciting, and thank you to all the panelists. I'm going to go check out, I'm going to view plaster clowning in a whole new way now.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator Allen. We have our public comment line all ready to go. So Ms. Goins, Dr. Kaufman, Dr. Olnick, thank you very much for joining us today.